we always seem to
Have a good time.
have a good time and
Get in trouble.
basically end up in trouble.
Today we are ranking the albums of Testament, starting with The Legacy in 1987. Alright, a long time coming for this one. Arguably one of the most respected thrash metal bands out there, and they knocked it out of the park right from the start with this debut. Tied for the highest fan rated on Metal Storm alongside The Gathering, and in case you didn't know, the band changed their name from The Legacy to Testament just about a month prior to this release. Killer riffs throughout the album and a good mix of speed and melody. I can also hear some hooks that feel like they rubbed off on bands like At the Gates and Soilwork from the Gothenburg Melodeath scene. Also love the more grand and atmospheric intro of Burnt Offerings. Start to finish headbanger. This one is going to perfection. Followed that up with The New Order in 1988. Going from an excellent debut to arguably an even better sophomore effort. It's no wonder that this broke them into the mainstream with the Trial by Fire video, but also backed by other instant classics like Into the Pit, The Preacher, Disciples of Watch, and the title track. So much incredible riffing on every single song, so much energy, love the implementation of gang vocals as well. And they know just when to drop a little interlude like Hypnosis to break up the pacing and deliver on some atmosphere without bringing the record to a screeching halt. Another easy top tier release for them. It's going to perfection. Then they followed that up with Practice What You Preach in 1989. Definitely hear the influence of Metallica on this one. The title track sounds like it could have been on Master of Puppets. Likewise, shifting away from the occult to more political themes. Great bass work highlighted on tracks like Perilous Nation, which also has a mix of Metallica and Megadeth vibes. I'm honestly not a big fan of this direction with the slower songs like Envy Life, but it definitely resonated with a larger audience as this was their first album to enter the top 100. They, however, don't play many of these songs live anymore, and it's not really my cup of tea. Blessed in Contempt has some great riffs and soloing. Sin of Omission is a bit more progressive, as is Confusion Fusion, which is a great instrumental. Overall, though, and this is probably going to be my first hot take of the video, I am just putting this at good because I don't know, their albums I think are way better than this one, both for Testament and in the year it was released.
So it's like that, huh?
But just a reminder, as always, this is just my opinion, so be sure to put your own rankings down below in the comments and also hit the like button if you're enjoying the video so far. But next up we have Souls of Black in 1990. Face in the Sky is a kick-ass opener, bringing back the speed with Falling Fast and Love to Hate strong as well. One Man's Hate is great, fun drumming and bass on that one. Still hearing more of that Metallica and Megadeth influence on certain tracks, sometimes for solid results, as with the riffy Absence of Light, Love to Hate, and Malpractice. Several of these songs were actually demoed in the late 80s, but had not been released and were reworked for this album. The band also considered this one to be sort of rushed out so that they could make the European Clash of Titans tour with Megadeth, Slayer, and Suicidal Tendencies. Personally, though, I like this one a lot, and much better than Practice What You Preach. It feels more kind of pure thrash with plenty of energy. It made Billboard at 73. I am putting this one at fantastic, and again, I'm interested to hear what you all think because I see some people rank this a lot lower. But next up is The Ritual in 1992. Electric Crown bringing more of a radio rock sound again, as was typical of most thrash bands trying to adapt to the 90s. Kind of reminds me of Load without the obvious hits, but a better listen all the way through and a bit more metal overall. Deadline has kind of a fun Jane's Addiction meets Stone Temple Pilots bop to it. I do enjoy the title track and Agony. This one hit number 55 on Billboard, but it is just going to okay for me. Props to Testament, though, because out of all the thrash metal bands that went through an ugly 90s period and continued, Testament was kind of the shortest and most inoffensive, I would say. Speaking of which, let's move on to Low in 1994. So if that album was influenced by grunge and alternative, this one is very clearly influenced by the rise of the groove metal sound of like Overkill and Pantera, with Cowboys from Hell and Vulgar Display of Power having made a huge mainstream impact in the 4 years leading up to this one. Chuck going for a very Phil Anselmo-esque Jarl and getting especially heavy on tracks like Low, All I Could Bleed, and especially Dog-Faced Gods. But also still experimenting at times with proggier elements on others like Chasing Fear. Not sure how I feel about Trail of Tears. It makes for a more dynamic listen, and I like the kind of dreamy atmosphere and excellent solo, but yeah, I'm just kind of on the fence with it. Notably, this is also the first album with a new lineup, including guitarist James Murphy and drummer John Tempesta, and the last with bassist Greg Christian until he would rejoin again in the 2000s. And speaking of Greg, I love his super funky spotlight on Urata, however you pronounce that song, which feels like a pretty awesome send-off. Sick drumming on the Try Not to Headbang Challenge worthy ride. The record itself was dedicated to Savatage guitarist Chris Olivia, who died during recording. As a Pantera fan myself, I dig this album quite a bit. I would even go so far as to say it's almost as strong as their best work. I'm going to put it at fantastic. Follow that up with Demonic in 1997. This one features Chuck and Eric, now with Derek Ramirez on bass, Gene Hoglan on drums, and Glenn Alvarez on guitar. True to the name and the album art, this one only gets heavier, with Demonic Refusal getting borderline death metal, and The Burning Times has this great graveyard atmosphere to it. And on here, I can definitely hear the influence they likely had on Lamb of God, as well as The Haunted, who had formed just a year before. Lots of great songs on here like John Doe, Distorted Lives, and Together as One feel like they could have easily been songs on Sacrament, which was still almost a decade away at this point. And hot take, I think that this is a better version of that sound.
Stop it.
New Eyes of Old also slaps. When it comes to thrash and groove metal, the heavier the better for me, so this is another easy standout on my list. Probably another hot take too, based again on some of the ratings I've seen that put this pretty low, but I'm putting this one all the way up at perfection. I think it slaps start to finish. You can fight me on that. But moving on, we have The Gathering in 1999. Another powerhouse lineup for this fan favorite with Steve DiGiorgio on bass and Dave Lombardo on drums. Leaning back into that Pantera Jarl while instrumentally delivering sort of a hybrid between thrash, groove, and, again, death metal. DRN is another slapper of an opener, and I love the drumming at the end of Down for Life. Legions of the Dead and Fall of the Sippledom are straight rippers with, again, kind of the haunted energy. Meanwhile, Eyes of Wrath, Allegiance, and True Believer go for a slower, more atmosphere-driven sound. And then some bluesier stuff like Careful What You Wish For, which I don't love, but works well enough. I dig the drumming. Riding the Snake gives me a little White Zombie, nice groove to Sewn Shut Eyes. That was likely an influence again on Lamb of God. Killer drumming on that one too. I am putting this one at fantastic. I definitely think some people probably put this one also at perfection, but it's like just short for me. They followed that up with First Strike Still Deadly in 2001. Partial reunion lineup here made up of Chuck Billy, guitarist Alex Skolnick, bassist Steve DiGiorgio, and drummer John Tempesta, along with original singer Steve Zetro Souza of Exodus. This consists of re-recorded songs from The Legacy and The New Order, as well as Reign of Terror from The Legacy Demo 1, and personally, I don't think it's ever really a great idea to George Lucas your best material. I've kind of moved on that opinion recently because there have been some good re-recordings lately, but I'm more of the opinion of like, take your bad material or lesser known material and make that better, kind of like Sodom did on that one album. But if you're inevitably going to have this compared to the original, I don't think many fans are going to say the new versions are better or even needed to really exist to begin with. These performances are all very good, but without that classic 80s production and same youthful angst, it's just not the same, and if anything, it makes them sound older. I will say that this is leaps and bounds better, though, than some of my least favorite remakes out there, like In Flames and Tool. So I'm going to put this one at good tier. Then we got The Formation of Damnation in 2008. Alex and Greg Christian reunion here, now with Paul Bostaff on drums. What a rotating lineup of drummers here. First album with Nuclear Blast Records too. At this point they just sound like Lamb of God to me, and it's hard to know who is influencing who. And that's not really a complaint, as I'm a big fan of especially early Lamb of God, but just being honest with my own feelings. More Than Meets the Eye is no laid to rest or ruin though. My main issue with this album though is it feels like Chuck gets way too comfortable with pretty much the same Jarl for like 80% of the album, save for a few deeper growls here and there, and it gets kind of grating after a while. When they do pop up, those tend to be my favorite tracks, including the Pummeling, the Formation of Damnation. The Persecuted Won't Forget shreds, and Henchman Ride has one of my favorite riffs on this album, more great bass on Leave Me Forever. And even when I don't love the vocals, the instrumentation is very strong, as on tracks like Dangers of the Faithless. I'm going to put this one also at good tier. Next up is Dark Roots of Earth in 2012.
Whenever I stumble, whenever I fall, whenever I push against the wall.
Gene Hoglan back on drums and the last album with Greg Christian. Similar criticisms of this one regarding the vocals, except this time I think I have an even harder time latching on fully to any of the songs here. I'm not particularly fond of Rise Up as an opener, as it just feels like a really generic call and response song for dummies. Native Blood gets points for the very personal concept and some kind of carcassy riffs, but it still falls a bit short for me. Dark Roots of the Earth is really dull, aside from the awesome solo. Another great bass intro and foot-stomping beats to the also kind of carcassy A Day in the Dream, also unfortunately marred by a vocal performance that actually started to remind me of later career Mudvayne. Everything else here is just meh to me. Last Stand for Independence is a solid closer, but really I could take or leave pretty much every track on this record. Once more, I must be in the minority because this was actually their highest charting album at number 12, but I am just putting it at okay tier. However, I do want to say that even testaments like worst albums are far more listenable than the worst, or in some cases even mid-material, of most other thrash metal bands. So moving on, we have Brotherhood of the Snake in 2016. Steve DiGiorgio back on bass again. Brotherhood of the Snake feels like a stronger opener, and nice to be getting some pure thrash energy with that, The Number of the Game, and Pale King. The latter, which also has some fun heavy metal sounding riffs. Same goes for the ripping Centuries of Suffering and Melodeath tinged Neptune's Spear. I'm still not in love with the vocals here, but it does feel like there's a bit more of an attempt to vary things up. I also think that Seven Seals is one of their more engaging, slower tracks. It's kind of an earworm, really. Still not perfect. I don't much care for the pretty corny Born in a Rut or severely on-the-nose lyrics of Stronghold, and I think that Chuck's delivery on the otherwise strong Blackjack is honestly among his worst. He's frequently just straight up off-key on this one.
I would really prefer if you would be quiet.
Overall, though, I'd say that the good outweighs the bad here, and it's a big improvement over the last one, and this was their second highest charting album at number 20. I'm going to put it at great tier. Then we got Titans of Creation in 2020. Notably, this was the first time since Ritual the band had recorded 2 back-to-back albums with the same lineup, though this would be the last one with Gene Hoglan back. Children of the Next Level is a solid opener that mostly keeps up the energy from the last album and has a great solo. Same goes for World War III, which feels like it's falling back into some of the issues I had with Dark Roots of the Earth, as does Dream Deceiver with some banging riffs, but a kind of corny chorus that deflates it a bit for me. Fortunately, though, there are some really great tracks here, too, the deeper you get in. Night of the Witch, Curse of Osiris, and False Prophet are all bangers, and City of Angels, Ishtar's Gate, and Code of Hammurabi have some of their more dynamic songwriting and bass. I'd say this is about on par with the last one overall. I'm also putting it at great tier. Which brings us to Para Bellum in 2025. almost the same lineup here, except with Chris Dovis taking over on drums, going super hard on these vocals, as well as some super hooky riffs on Infanticide AI, making for a great single, another killer opener too, with some downright grind elements on For the Love of Pain, giving me some lock-up energy. Rest in peace, Thomas Lindbergh. Witch Hunt goes for a very wicked sort of blackened thrash approach, while there's more Lamb of God aggression and also conjuring of some gunslinger imagery on High Noon, and then also some great mid-paced material on the very Megadeth-sounding Room 117, Iron Maiden riffage on Havana Syndrome, and the catchy groovy Shadow People.
Outstretched inside the darkness pulls me down tight inside my bed.
This album was already on the fast track to perfection on my first listen, but unfortunately it's brought down by a few things. Meant to Be, while written and performed well, is a total cornball love ballad that personally I just don't need on any thrash or groove album in most cases, and it doesn't help that it's over 8 minutes long and totally kills the momentum after the first 3 songs. I also find Nature of the Beast to be pretty cheesy, classic rock and roll paint by numbers, some solid soloing though. Frankly, cut those 2 songs and I think that this could easily be one of their best records front to back. The title track really closes things out strong too, with some incredibly satisfying guitar work. And the increased diversification in the vocals on this one and general aggression really takes it a long way. I'm torn with this one because I think that overall I enjoy it more than the last 2, but I'm not sure that it's quite as consistently good as my albums at Fantastic here. So consider it like kind of sandwiched between these 2 tiers, but I think for now I'll just put it at like the top of great tier. Y'all check out this playlist for more thrash metal rankings, including most of the big 4. We haven't gotten to Anthrax yet because they still haven't released their new album. Or check out this for your personal YouTube recommendation. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.